head first. Little touch. Then we slices. Nice and lovely. We're going to take off the bones. All done.
He and others like him were smoking salmon because it was a way of preserving fish. There was very little refrigeration in those days, and it was something they were familiar with. And in the very early days, he didn't even realise there was a salmon native to Britain. So he would ship over salmon from the Baltic. It would arrive in barrels of salt water, and that's what he would smoke for his own sort of community in the East End. And it was only when he went to the fish market at Billingsgate and saw these beautiful wild salmon coming down from Scotland and thought, why don't we just use the local fish? It'll be a lot easier. And he started smoking the Scottish salmon, and the product was just so amazing. People fell in love with it, and it took off. And I would say that smoked salmon, and what we today refer to as London Cure smoked salmon, became Britain's first ever homegrown gourmet food. So what you do is you take the salmon fillet, or you take the salmon, you fillet it, then you sprinkle the salmon fillet with salt, you leave it for 24 hours, and the salt draws out all the moisture, and that's how you start to preserve it. You then air dry it, so you have these fans just blowing warm air over the fish to draw out more moisture, and as it dries, it becomes quite tacky and sticky. That's when you release the smoke, and the smoke sticks to the outside of the fillet and it creates a seal on the outside. And if they had vacuum packing 100 years ago, they might never have smoked it, but they didn't. So the smoke was the seal, and that meant that you could just hang the fish, the smoked salmon, in a cold larder, and it would just stay, protected, because that smoky seal was a barrier. We are literally doing every single step of it by hand. We're hand splitting the salmon, chopping the head and the tail off, chopping the fish in half. We hand salt it, we're hanging the fish on racks, we're taking every single little pin bone we take out with a pair of tweezers. I worked out that since we've been in business, we've probably taken out about 1 billion bones, literally by tweezer. We hand slice it, we hand pack it. And that means that you have an expert at every single step of the way, quality controlling the product. We lose about 20 to 30% of the weight of the fillets just by taking out all that moisture to preserve the fish. But when you're selling fish by the kilo, if you can sell water for the price of salmon, it's very good business, but it makes the fish very slimy. So a lot of modern producers now try to keep the water in, so they brine the fish, they inject it with salt water, and so on. And we often consumers that aren't familiar with how smoked salmon used to be are actually put off by smoked salmon nowadays. They find it slimy, they don't like the texture. Sometimes they find it just way too smoky, and they often say, 2 or 3 hours later they need 20 peppermint chewing gums to get rid of the taste of the smoke. But that's not how smoked salmon is meant to be, or how it should be. I mean, you know, an easy sign actually is if you look at the ingredients labels on the back, there should never be sugar in smoked salmon. You know, there are two ingredients, salmon and salt. That's it. But most producers add sugar nowadays, and the reason they add sugar, well, there are a few reasons, but one of the main reasons they add sugar is because the smoked salmon is so smoky, and smoke is actually quite bitter. So if you add sugar, it takes away the bitterness of the smoke. Some of them add sugar because they add too much salt, because they want to extend the shelf life. It makes it easier for a retailer to sell it if they've got more time to sell it. And then when it's too salty, which is quite unhealthy, it tastes too salty, they use the sugar to counterbalance the additional salt. But there should never be sugar in smoked salmon.